This is a tutorial that will take you through how to make an adaptive mixed reality project using the Vortals software platform. So to start, click on New Vortal, and you'll be given a project setup menu. If we give a name, and under project type you'll find mixed reality, and if you click that drop down you'll find the option for adaptive mixed reality. So I'll choose that. So I choose Create. And when you choose Adaptive Mixed Reality, you'll be given a view like this. And while it might look quite visually daunting at first, it's actually quite a simple system to use. So this is my start node. This just designates where the presentation will start. If I want to create a slide, I right-click, and I've got a whole bunch of different options. So to start, I will create a typical 2D slide. So I choose Add 2D Slide. And then this little node pops up. So this is a 2D slide. And I might choose to create another 2D slide. Now, in order to choose the first slide that will appear in the presentation, I can take the start node and I can connect it to whichever 2D slide node that I wish. So I might click here in the bottom of this node, which is the green little box here, and when I drag out, so I'm clicking and dragging, a little line will appear, and I can connect that line to the top of a node. So if I choose this left-hand node here, I click drag and then I let go, this is now going to be the first slide in the presentation. And I can drag this down here, and if I choose the node itself and I click and drag, I can choose the second node to be the second slide in the presentation. Now, if I've decided that no, actually I've got this all wrong and I want this bottom node to be the first slide in the presentation, I can disconnect all these nodes. And the way to do that is to click on one of these green nodes and drag it off the box and then let go, and you'll see the line disappears. So these are now disconnected. So I can rearrange this and I can drag and click and drag again. And now the slide that was this first slide is now the second slide, and the slide that was the second slide is now the first slide in the presentation. And so you can use this node system to control the flow of a presentation. And in the initial phases that might seem no different to a typical presentation system that you might have used just with nodes. But this system creates a whole bunch more options and abilities to adapt how this flow works. And what I mean by that, I'll need to create a button. So let me go to the first slide and click on Edit Slide. And so in doing so, that's now taken me to the typical slide interface that you might be used to. So what I'll do is I'll create a button. And I click on this button and I will choose Slide. And then I'll choose Button Image to create an image for the button, and I'll choose Next. And now this, you don't have to choose any of these, but I'll just leave it at Slide 1, and I'll click Make Button. And so now we have a button in this slide. So whatever other content I have here, in order to progress to the other slides, I can click Next. So if I go back to the node editor, what we find here is that we have a separate option. So whereas previously, like this node at the bottom here, we just had one exit out of the node, we now have two exits. So let me create a third 2D slide. So again, that was a right click and I chose 2D slide. And I can now click and drag and connect this node to the button. So what will now happen is if I click on that button, it will take me to this 2D slide. So let me go back to the first 2D slide and let me add a second button. So again, I'll choose the slide button and I'll add a different image for the button, and I'll just keep the slides open as is. I'll click Make Button. Okay, so now I have a different button image. And if I go back to the node editor, which we'll see this button up at the top left-hand side here, and I click that, now I have two button options. And what I can do there is I can right-click and I'll create an augmented reality slide. So now I've created an augmented reality slide. And if I join this button to that slide, now what will happen is if I click the first button I made, I'll be taken to this 2D slide. If I click the second button I made, I'll be taken to the augmented reality slide. So let me go to that augmented reality slide. So one of the key issues that you'll have to manage when you create an augmented reality slide is you'll have to choose all of your augmented options. So I'm going to choose a vertical tracking plate, and I'll update this slide. So here we have our augmented reality slide that will use this vertical tracking plate. So now we can look at the flow of this system. So we start with this 2D slide. That's how we've chosen to do it. So the first slide we'll see will be this one. And then we have two different options. I can click Next, or I can click Image Track Slide. And those will take me to very different parts of the presentation. So I can very quickly create a completely different presentation that the audience might see depending on what button I press. Now I can also create, let me go to this slide here, I can also create a question list. So let me choose a true-false question. So we ask a simple question, is the sky blue? And we're going to be able to choose true as our correct answer. And we create this question list. So I can adapt how this question list looks. So I can change the background, I can change a whole bunch of different things about this question. Okay, so this is how I want it to look, I've decided. So now I'll go back to my node editor. And what we see is that when you create a question list, you get extra options for exiting the node. So if I was to choose a true answer or a false answer, I can adapt the learning that has happened. So let's say the sky is blue, I can click on this slide and I can add some text saying correct. Or alternatively, if I go to the incorrect answer, I can choose incorrect. And so what will happen is the user will come down, he'll choose this button, he'll be taken down to this 2D slide, he'll answer the question, and depending on his answer, I can take him to a completely different part of the presentation. Now, just because we've diverged the presentation doesn't mean that we can't bring it all back into the same system. So let me create another node, and I'll click and drag all of the diverged nodes back in to a final slide. And so you can see that using this adaptive technology, you can take people down very different paths depending on the answers and the buttons that they might choose to press. Now you can diverge to a single node, but you can converge multiple nodes into one node. So you can see as I go from all of these different nodes here, they can all converge into this one slide, but I cannot connect this slide to many, many different slides. So this is the basics of how to create an adaptive system in Vortals.